I had no idea what I was doing, just using general investing accounts. No idea what pension was, no idea what anything else was.
Can anyone learn how to be good at investing? Toby Newbatt is a personal finance YouTuber, and everything he knows is self-taught.
Could you identify, for example, Michael Jordan, if you went to a high school in America today? That strategy is terrible. for almost everything that's ever happened.
Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is probably
Such a
one
charlatan.
I just wish someone got to me earlier.
Yeah, that's it.
I found you, mate, don't worry. Daddy's here. As much as we joke, we are very similar in the sense of we worked in similar areas and we got to invest in through non-traditional routes and things like this.
Yeah.
So I do want to start with, like, you know, how did you kind of get into investing?
Purely by accident, probably like a lot of people. I think the first thing I did, and I can't remember what platform I used, but the first thing I did was basically I fell into like FX trading or just buying stocks and shares. So probably like what a lot of people do, because you see what I think I might have saw one of those adverts online, a banner ad, and I was like, oh, you can make how much? Or buy this thing today. I'm pretty sure I clicked on it and set up an account.
I like singles in my area.
Yeah, exactly. I know. They put those banner ads up because I'm one of the only people who clicks on them, you know, so they got me. And I can't remember how long I did it for. I'm almost certain I lost money. I would have got some trades right, I would have got the other ones right. But I do remember being at work one time, I had my laptop open and I was doing some FX trading. Obviously, knowing nothing about it, didn't do any research. It was just like, it's like 50-50. You're betting whether the pound or the dollar goes up or down. And like, I'm feeling like it's going to go up today, so I'll bet that. And then I just did that. It was only like later on, probably a couple of years later, where I got into what I would call more traditional investing. But still, I had no idea what a stocks and shares ISA was. I had no idea what any kind of investing account was. I think I set up on like Hargreaves Lansdown or something like that. And I filled out their form, did the thing where they pick your investments for you. So they gave me like 5 or 6 funds. I was like, okay, I guess. I had no idea what was in them. They kind of give you a bit of a mess, to be honest. And that was it. And then
Neil Woodford.
It was a bit of Woodford. There was I think there might be a bit of Fun Smith in there, a bit of Terry Smith. And then after that, it was really a few years later on, and I think I kind of discovered YouTube at that point, at least YouTube investing. So I've always been on YouTube as a viewer. Anytime you want to find anything, it's always how to do this on YouTube. You know, it's always been part of my life. And then I think I found the US influencers talking about finance and investing, like Graham Stephan and Andre Gierke talking about S&P 500 index funds and all that sort of thing. So that's when I first started getting into it. And then this leads on to kind of where we are today. When I watched all their stuff, I thought, well, these are all the US voices. And then I tried to find the UK people, and there wasn't many. And I can't really remember who I found. I don't think I found you.
We started basically at the same time.
I think you had about a year on me, a year or 18 months. But I can't remember if I found you. But I just thought at that point, there's definitely an opportunity here for someone to talk about from the UK perspective, because they're all talking about Roth IRAs and 401ks. No one's talking about our stuff. And that's kind of what led me into what I'm doing now in a more traditional investing route of using those tax advantage accounts, because all of that stuff, I had no idea what I was doing, just using general investing accounts. No idea what pension was, no idea what anything else was. Well, like most people. And then I kind of went down the road of just trying to find out what all this stuff is. But purely by accident, really. It's not, I just feel like I got lucky about finding it, because there was someone at work saying, oh, I invest, or what do you invest in? I'll use this platform, I'll give that a try. But I had no idea what I was doing.
Isn't it crazy that you kind of have to rely on a bit of luck to get you into it?
Yeah.
And it's completely life-changing in terms of, and for many people, it's kind of like your only chance of a good retirement.
Exactly.
And it's whether you just encounter like an uncle or a friend, or there's people that, like, I'm sure watch your content, that watch mine, that go, I randomly got suggested one of your videos, I clicked it, and now I invest every month.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that. I don't know what the conventional investing route is, but you need someone.
I think people stumble into it.
They just stumble into it. Yeah, exactly.
I think like I did it the same as you. A lot of people start with individual stock picking, and then some go well, some go badly. So my time was around like the BP oil spill.
Yeah,
and
I remember
I was like, oh, they're going to come back once. Of course, yeah. So it crashed and I bought some, but then I bought some others that didn't do so well, and then found the Neil Woodford fund. So it's kind of like you stumble and then lost loads of money. Lost loads of money in that. And I was like, this is not for me. And I just left out. Went to uni and like just partied for a few years. Yeah. I'm like, and then left investing till I got into crypto. So I was very untraditional in route. I think then finally got into like the passive passive funds.
Because it's not obvious. Like, I mean, like index funds, and you hear these words, index trackers, and I don't even know they existed. In fact, if you look back at the history of them, they've only been around for like not long. Like the first ever ETF, I think it was either 92 or 93, was actually started in Canada. And then only got to the S&P 500 first ETF ever produced was a year later, I believe, in the United States. So ETFs,
global trackers are even younger, right?
Yeah, global trackers are even younger. So actually, when we think about it, like investing is still really new, and at least in the way that we talk about it, almost the boring way, isn't it? Index funds and tracking the market. But it's all quite new. So we realize that it's only been going for a couple of decades. If you think about how popular it's got, so ignore the 90s, it's only really been popular and accessible for, I guess, a couple of decades, really, at best. So it is all still new to us. So we're all still learning, but there's so much to learn for most people. It's crazy, but I think it's simple. Once you understand the key
but I think people have to burn their fingers or make the mistake of like, I'm going to buy these stocks. Like my friend bought some game stock because she's like, oh, I like video games. And then she's like, I don't actually know why I bought this. I just like video games. And then it went down. She's like, I'm like, you probably should have done a bit more research into it. And I'm like, just go for fun. And she's like, oh, that's a good idea. Because normally people are like, I like this, I'll buy this. I know Blockbuster, I know BP, I know Amazon.
Yeah. And then going back to one of the most famous investors who've kind of ever existed in the investing world, Peter Lynch, he'd always say, know what you own, which I think is still valid today, like why you own it. Even if you own an index fund, or if you want to go down in individual stocks, you really have to know what they do. I don't think it has to be like on a super deep level, but you have to understand, how does that company make their money? And then I think that's why people like gravitate to the companies like Apple, for example, and Amazon. They've done well. But it's like, I use it every day. I like it. Is this a good thing? Other people like it. I know what they do. But maybe we'll touch on the subject a bit later. Just because you know what they do doesn't mean you can tell the future.
Yeah.
And this is a topic I've kind of dived into quite a lot when I'm doing the literature and the reading and the data, and you realize that I think my phrase, I think it's like tattooed now, is I don't think you can't research the future.
Where have you got that tattooed?
Roman's
got crypto on the nutsack.
Yeah, he's got bonds on the butt cheeks or something.
Yeah, well, it's just bonds upper thigh now.
Yeah, let's talk about the books then. I've got to say this, people might not know, but if you've ever spent any time on YouTube, you'll have seen a title and thumbnail that's like, I read insert number of books here, here's what will make you rich. And you invented this.
So for the record, I made this title. This is my video.
There must be 100 million views on that video.
Yeah, I'm the original. We've got the receipts to prove it. In fact, so when I originally released that video, so I had this as a video idea from when I started the channel. I thought, right, well, I know a good amount about investing, the basic stuff, but if I'm going to be good at this, I'm going to have to read up. I basically tried to read like the most popular books for investing, general personal finance, and then with a few different like business ones sprinkled in. And it was an amazing journey, actually. I didn't really have an order, but I was like, right, everyone says like the best investing book is this really popular one called by Benjamin Graham, Intelligent Investor, for example. So I read that. Psychology of Money was a great one.
Psychology of Money is amazing.
But jumping back to The Intelligent Investor, that is a thick book.
It's not a beginner book, that.
No, it's not a beginner book as well.
I reckon the amount of people that say that beginners should start there have never read that book.
No,
because it's heavy.
You get through it. Now, I read everything cover to cover, right? Because I thought, right, I'm going to do this properly. But yeah, by 3/4 of it, I'm like, oh, this is a bit dull. As a beginner, because remember, this is decades old. This is before index funds. It's not a UK book. It's from an American perspective. It's before the tech boom. So it's talking about all these older companies. And it tries to give you good lessons about companies that are profitable and companies at certain PE ratios. But I look back at books like that. I'm like, if you were investing now or the last 10 years, I don't think you would have bought any of the stocks that have done well if you followed some of the rules in that. So it's quite interesting.
It's a value investing and you'd have missed out a lot of growth.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like one style of investing, which people can argue still works, but I think it's a harder argument now. But maybe that's a discussion we can have later. But the market is it upside down? Is it overvalued? Are we just justifying it being overvalued, or is the AI boom real or whatever? But what's interesting, well, if we go back to some of the books, you can learn from history. Like one of the books I read actually recently, not in the 40 books, was one of the oldest books that's been written about the stock market. It was written about the stock market in Amsterdam, and you'd be amazed just how many things are exactly the same now as they were then. That one was called, and I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Is it like a fanciful? It's like a weird name, like a great Ruth to the producer. Do you remember the name of that book? I feel like Rogan here. Jamie, pull that up.
Confusion of confusion.
That's the confusion.
That's what's Confusion of Confusions. Yeah.
Yeah. What a name. That's a great name.
That is so, because basically, there's no digital stock market, but they had the coffee houses and they had this exchange square, and basically groups of people, traders with different stocks, would spread rumors around the place, like, oh, this thing's looking bad at the moment, to try and make you sell or make you buy. But they were all playing the same games, and we play the exact same games now, but it's all on TV, it's all on Twitter, it's all on social media. Rumors start spreading, the stock price gets hit, people buy in, for example, nothing really changed. And so many things in all the books that I've read just make you realize that, history doesn't rhyme, but it definitely doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Definitely rhymes,
the other way around. And so many themes just come up time and time again. And this makes me think a lot of investing is so tied to, psychology and human nature.
Oh yeah.
The almost things you're investing almost don't really matter to a certain extent. So much of it is in your nature, and the fear you feel when you miss out when it goes up, and also the panic you feel when things get low as well.
That's why I love The Psychology of Money, because
that's a really good book.
It's like, I find that the most impactful book I think I've read on.
I think that's so accessible, because some of the books I read, like The Intelligent Investor, and some other ones get too technical, I think, anyway, for most people. And because a lot of people will ask me, like, what's my favorite book? I actually prefer the ones which are like super basic, which can take you from zero to knowing loads in a short space of time. I did reference Money. I forget her name. Is it Laura? Did you interview her once?
I think Laura? Maybe for a pilot episode. Laura.
Is that a surname?
What? Sorry.
Waitley.
Laura Waitley,
yeah. I really like that book. It's an orange one. It looks like a Monzo card.
Yes.
Really small book, actually. You can read that in like four hours or something. It might...
For the test, sorry, just to explain, but people wonder what we're going on about. For the test of if we were going to do the podcast, we interviewed Laura prior as like a pilot, like a test run.
Oh, okay,
she agreed to do that for us.
That's quite cool. Yeah, I think that's like a really underrated book, because she's based in the UK, so it's all about pensions, ISAs, all the basics, about credit cards, about loans, mortgages. So you get a really good understanding of everything. And I think then you can build up onto that on the more technical stuff. Like when we get into the investing side, you've got obviously Jack Bogle, who founded Vanguard, did a book called The Little Red Book on investing. That's a really popular one as well. And then there's another popular book I like called A Random Walk Down Wall Street by Burton Malkiel. So it's called Random Walk because effectively we wanted to test this theory. So you can imagine if you walked out of this street right now and did a walk and did a random walk, you might have one step an inch forward, you might do one little jump, you might do one of those silly walks like Monty Python or something. And he thought that this was a bit like the stock market, because the stock market just can jump up and down or do nothing or do little steps. And the book really tests the theory that people know what they're doing, so they're trying to predict the walk. So you can imagine you're walking down the street and you've got all these stock market people on the other side saying, I think he's going to do a small step next. The other person says, no, I think he's going to do a big step or a jump. And then, of course, they're all saying, well, he did 3 jumps in a row, which means he's going to do another jump next. Anyway, all these kind of things. But it comes down to the fact that basically no one can predict the market at all. And I think that remains foundational today. But it still worries me the amount of people who, through whatever method, they still convince themselves that they can.
Yeah. And they're confident with it.
And they're confident.
They're trying to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, trust me, I know I'm...
See, I'm in two minds, because I used to like really be against that. I'm now almost like, if you're that confident, you are part of that market. So it's like, put your money where your mouth is. You might be right.
I think there's a very small percentage you can. And I think I think the idea that lots of people can beat the market is wrong.
That's a difficult
I think
part.
you're basically an elite athlete. If you're the kind of person, and because people go, what about Warren Buffett? What about this? And they'll hold up these examples, but it's like, what about Usain Bolt? What about, like Michael Jordan, Messi? You're picking like the freaks of the sport and saying that anyone could play at that level, basically.
Exactly.
But I was going to say at the same time, it does depend on how much time you put into it. Because like if you're like fully absorbed and like immersed in an industry and like in a company you're learning about a certain stock, you will know more than like 90% of people. So I think
that's a really interesting point. I was going to bring this up because one of the arguments you see on YouTube, in all social media and anywhere, is to be a good stock picker, you need to just do the research. This thing called do the research. So, and I guess if I ask both of you, well, what does do the research mean?
Watching a Toby video and then going on Twitter and looking for some arguments.
It could,
it's like that. This is what people think research is, right?
Or like you said, it could actually be, you might work at a company. So I worked at a company and I was able to buy their own stock. So I thought, I work here, so I understand more what's going on. But no matter how much you know about what's going on now and the past, again, you can't research the future. And I keep coming back to that. And it doesn't mean that, for example, let's say, a company like McDonald's or a company like American Express, like who's had a track record of doing well for decades. It doesn't mean they're going to go bust next year. But it also means if they're predictable, then that, I would argue at least, that price of the stock has already been baked in. So what's different? What gives you the edge that you think, I'm going to buy Apple today, the biggest company in the world, the one covered by the most analysts? People have got teams looking at this one company. What makes you think you're so special? And so in a way, I've almost, at least I think it's useful to just have a lot of humility. And also saying this, I'm a hypocrite because I've got my own stocks too. So, and that's what I've learned really, when you look about your own psychology, is as much as you think, okay, well, I should just be really boring and buy the S&P 500 or buy index funds. But if I look at my own psychology, I'm like, I'm just a human like everyone else. So I'm also a hypocrite because I've got my own stocks. And I think, no, I think I'm going to beat the market, but I think, why not? I'll roll the dice as well with you.
I definitely think I'm going to beat the market. I beat the market like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, I beat the market yesterday.
I'll give you an idea.
I'll beat it again tomorrow.
I'll give you an example, So obviously I worked in crypto for crypto's controversial, but I worked in it for like 4 years. So Trump obviously released Trump coin. And I'm like, knowing crypto, knowing the market, I'm like, this is so high risk. But he's just released it. It's a weekend. It's only just come out. I'm like, this is going to go sky high. And then it's probably going to crash and loads of people are going to lose money.
Yeah, exactly.
So I bought it, held it for 12 hours, made 700. How much did I make? 700?
He's asking me because he had to come to Daddy to get him to sell it.
I was like, Damo, I've made 760% on Trump coin. He's like, sell it. I'm like, but what if it goes high? It's like, Tamain, sell it. And I was like, I was like, took me 2 hours or something to sell it. I'm like, I finally pulled the trigger. And then literally like 2 hours later, it crashed. So so you did that happened. And I'm like,
now he's a genius.
Now I'm a genius. But when I lose money in like,
tell him about rat token. Tell him about your rat token.
When I lost money in like some other tokens, I'm like, it's not my fault. It's like
I got scammed.
It's a Chinese releasing AI. Like there's always a reason. But when you do well, you're like, I'm a genius. I'm smarter than everyone else. So
now the big question is, did you buy Melania?
No. I did, and I sold it very. I lost like.
How did that go? I
lost like 12%.
Well, that pumped for a little bit. It didn't reach anywhere near the market cap, I believe, but it still pumped up to a ridiculous market cap.
Yeah, and then it
flopped.
I sold quickly. Like I lost like.
We are in crazy times.
Yeah,
and things like that make you. I can see why people now argue again, like we're in that 2021 bubble again, because there's meme coins of the president. I mean.
Yeah.
Not just made by someone else, sponsored by him.
And I don't buy meme coins, but I was like, this is the president of the United States. People are going to buy this. It's a terrible investment, but people will buy it. So let me just make some... So there are times like COVID when Damo was going to buy a house and he's like, the market's crashed, all these airlines have crashed. I'm like, we're going to start flying eventually. So I bought some airlines. Damo bought loads of stocks. So there are times when you're like, you can look at the market, you can make a smart decision based on what you know and your research and the past performance of the market and things like that.
What research are you doing into airlines today?
Yeah, none.
Your research was like, I got on a plane once, I'm going to do that again.
Get on lots of
Buy some EasyJet.
Yeah, I like to travel.
Do your research. What research, really?
No, more like crypto. I didn't do any research on that. That was just an instinct. But like, if you work in an industry, or you can see like this is underpriced. You can tell if something's underpriced.
There's a thing that it comes up a lot in the reading, and the best investors will always they'll say you've got to be a contrarian. Because obviously the prices of all those stocks that you saw during the COVID dip, they went down because there was more sellers than buyers. There's more selling pressure. Yeah. So most people were panicking and scared. And you kind of thought, right, it's got to come back surely. So there's definitely like irrationality there. And we can touch on another topic. Like the markets are efficient to a certain degree, where all the knowledge that we know now about what we think is going to happen is already baked in. But I think you've got to tie that with the fact that the market is everyone. It's short-term people, it's long-term people, it's everyone panicking and some people trying to make a fast money, some people trying to make short money. So all of these things are happening at the same time. So I think there's definitely opportunity. The question always is, going back to Damien's point about Messi and the top people in their sports, could you identify, for example, Michael Jordan, if you went to a high school in America today, could you identify the Michael Jordan of tomorrow by watching an NBA match? And could you do that repeatedly and consistently?
No, because people are paid millions to do that and they can't do that.
Yeah. Because and then another thing, to flip that story on its head, I was thinking this on the train down. Just because you tell people that most people won't beat the market, if you go up and down the country and see soccer field, football fields of kids playing, and you told them, look, most of you, in fact, almost all of you are never going to play for Man United, but you tell them, they'll just go, don't care, I'm still going to try.
Yeah.
And it comes back a bit to human nature there, that we're always going to try and think we're better.
Yeah.
And I almost like that in a way. That's just being human. So
yeah, it's a good analogy. And I think even if you continue that out, you could identify Michael Jordan. You could know everything about the sport, and then he breaks his leg one day, or he becomes a drug addict, or like, do you know what I mean? And he crashes and burns.
Yeah.
And
this is the unknown.
An unknown.
Yeah.
One of the pillars of personal finance is having an emergency fund so that you can withstand financial shocks. But the value of holding on to lots of cash beyond that is questionable because it just gets eaten away by inflation. You should put that money to work, and really the same goes for any money that's in your business. There's an amount you want to hold in your business account to ensure that you can weather any storms, but then you want to put the rest of the money to work, and where should you do that? I use Tide's Instant Saver account for this scenario, and they're offering new customers 3.81% AER variable on unlimited deposits until June 1st, 2025. I even use it for stuff like putting all my tax money in, so my up and coming VAT bill, I stick it in there so I can generate a little bit of a return on it in the meantime. If you'd like to give it a go, then use the code MAKINGMONEYQ1 and you'll get £100 if you add £5,000 in the first 30 days. There's a link in the description for you where you can also find a link to the full T's and C's and Tides terms. The variable rate is correct as of the 6th of February, 2025.
Another one as well, because just tying into like the psychology of investing, and so there's books about psychology, not necessarily tied to investing, but there's really interesting ones which just talk about the way that we look for patterns, for example. You know, there was a story years ago. Do you remember it was like in America, and someone made toast and they saw the face of Jesus or something?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Jesus wasn't in that toaster, I think, anyway.
It was like burnt toast, but it was burnt into the face of Jesus.
And they're like, oh my God, this must be a sign. Well, as humans, we're really good at that. You know, we look for faces in the dark, for example. You know, we hallucinate. And in a similar way, when people look at stock market charts, they're looking for, if something goes up for 10% forever, or it must go up 10% next year. But that's just not the way investing works. Again, because we all think that and we all know that. So we're all thinking, oh, I better get ahead of T. I better get ahead of Damien because I know it's going to go up 10% next year. So I'm going to put my order in early. Well, other people are thinking that as well. And then someone else is thinking, they might put their order in too early. I'm going to put mine in afterwards, but I'm going to bet it's going to go down. So this market and this psychology is always going on.
Dogecoin was a good example of that. Remember when everyone was like, when Elon talks on SNL, it'll pump.
Yeah.
And it crashed.
It crashed.
Because
exactly.
everyone
the
like,
opposite. Yeah. And Dogecoin millionaire. I think is he still a millionaire now? The guy on YouTube.
He's probably back to being a millionaire.
Put his life savings in. You must know about the Dogecoin millionaire.
Must
be your idol, isn't
it? No, I like Solana. I'm a Solana and a Bitcoin maximalist, and I like a lot of Solana. Man. But yeah, Bitcoin and Solana.
Yeah.
There's a hip hop YouTube channel, and he's the voice of it.
Is it?
Yeah, I hear him speaking on it.
No way.
Like he comments about, like the rise of Jay-Z and all this, and it's his voice. So I think he does all right.
There's not one corner of YouTube you don't know, is there?
No, I know it all, mate.
YouTube takes down some dark alleys, yeah. I mean, I must probably
the Nutty Putty Cave disaster was a niche of mine that I was.
The Nutty Putty Cave disaster.
Yeah, me and Toby were deep into the Nutty Putty sub niche at one point.
But basically, so this, anyways, it's quite a horrible story. But a guy gets stuck in a cave in America. He passes away, but once you watch a video like that, YouTube just feeds you all the horror stories.
Oh no!
So it's like, he got caught upside down.
Not one of those little,
little
tiny.
Yeah.
But he knew he was getting to this is part of the thrill.
They go into the tight space too. It gives me
but
so much.
But he went down the wrong route, ends up upside down the story.
And they tried to get him out, but they could. He was there for like
his body's still down there.
Because they sealed it up. Because you physically couldn't pull him back because the body couldn't tell that. It could go one way, but not the other. But it's horrible. But anyway, YouTube, you watch that video and you get all the rest. It's horrible.
Why don't you watch this?
Yeah, me and Toby were talking one day, and I was like, I'm getting some really weird stuff on YouTube at the minute. He was like, Nutty Putty Cave disaster. I was like, how did you know?
Because I think it's like similar age. They're into finance.
No, we're the same guys.
Like these
mid-30s white guys from the UK.
That, like, you put on a fake beard whenever you're trying to be him, and that's it.
Yeah, existential crisis. Yeah, watch this one next.
Yeah, watch the Nutty Putty stuff. Okay, I want to come back to the books and the knowledge, because I think a lot of people pretend to have read 40 books and they haven't.
Yeah,
right?
and I get that comment as well. You didn't. I got one comment which said the books in the thumbnail, they looked immaculate. oh, the spines haven't been broken properly. How do I respond to comments like that? I don't rip apart
I'm a careful
my books.
reader.
Yeah, I am. Anyway.
Maybe you listened on Audible and you need.
Yeah, so did you read them or did you listen to some?
I read all of the books.
That's dedication.
I read all of them.
What's the most overrated piece of financial advice you heard?
Overrated. It comes down to this idea that you can just, if you want to pick stocks and be successful, you just do the research. I genuinely think this is overrated. It's almost like, it sounds too easy. It says, if you don't want to do the work, you just pick index funds. If you do want to do the work, then you can pick stocks. But what does that, I don't, to this day, I don't know what do the work means.
People can't even agree on what research is, because you'll have like discounted cash flow models, you'll have like bottom up, you'll have like, fundamental analysis. There's like schools of thought within research.
Because think about this, right? You could be a top accountant and go through all the books of the best companies, right? But that doesn't mean that you know what's going to happen next to the share price. Because if it was, then all the best investors would be accountants, but they're not. Mm-hmm. Likewise, all the best investors aren't from one demographic or similar person. So then it makes me think, again, comes back to being able to pick someone or be consistent with finding that person. It's like, what does that even mean? So that annoys me a little bit. And most books don't say that, but there are some books which are trying to encourage trading and from a short-term perspective, convincing people almost that, they've all got a course to sell, but convincing people that if you just do their method and you become a value investor and you look for these ratios, you'll find good companies. But some companies are cheap for a reason. Others may not. You agreed, like the COVID dip. You think you could have bought good companies then, but that is probably the worst advice, I would say, because it can mean anything. Like you said, do your own research. What does that mean?
It's almost like a disclaimer.
It is
not advice, bro.
Yeah.
Do your own research.
And it's a shame we have to say that, because you do need to do your own research. But it's like, well, where do you start?
Someone asked me on LinkedIn, like, oh, how do I start researching crypto? And I'm like, I need to write a
Don't
page.
be messaging.
I was like, look, like the amount of research you need to do, I can't even describe it. So I don't even know how to answer this, because like you have to embed yourself in it. And I still got scammed in crypto. So like,
exactly.
It's like,
and even the flip
side. You can't answer that question in a page. That's what I mean.
But then the flip side, so and I forget which book this was in, but again, it comes down to like experiments. They let a couple of completely just ignorant, I think it was a couple of housewives in America basically just pick some stocks, right, against hedge funds. And they just pick random stocks. They think, oh, like, I like that product. It's like in the 1980s. It was like a clothing brand. They're like, oh, it's like the Gap. I like the Gap. So they picked the Gap, and these other hedge fund managers trawled through all the data. They picked their stocks, and the women won over like 5 or 10 years.
It's like the monkey with throwing darts.
It's like the monkey with throwing darts. Yeah, like if we're all monkeys and we're all throwing darts, someone will get the best picks, right? Someone will smash the market, and everyone will look at them thinking, oh my God, they're amazing. I better copy them.
How did he throw the dart?
How did
he holds it like this.
Yeah.
And
exactly. He had a toke on a cigarette before he threw it. Like,
exactly. They'll analyze it, and then the monkey also might get a bit arrogant. They might be like, well, I'm pretty good at this actually. I should do this for a living and charge money
buy my course.
Yeah,
buy my course, I'll teach you how to throw that dart.
I'll teach you how to do it. But
then again, with all these courses, if you're so good and you're making so much money, why are you selling the course? Why don't you just keep doing it every day? Just doing
Jim
your
Simmons, is it?
And making
Jim
millions.
Simmons
Jim
with
Simons,
the quantitative fund. He locked himself away and didn't tell anyone what he was doing. He's the example of a guy who probably knew how to beat the market.
Yeah, super clever guy. This was like the first days of quantitative trading, so using computers and algorithms to basically do short-term trades and beat the market. Now, effectively, so Jim Simons is one of the only examples who've really done this. But that is definitely more trading rather than investing. So they're not holding off stuff for the long term. I believe he compounded his fund, not compounded, but every year. It's like 60% a year.
Yeah.
But not compounded, but every year using the same amount of money.
Shorter career than Warren Buffett, but more higher percentage return. And he died. He's dead. He's dead. But he's a guy that you could go, he knew how to beat the market. And he wasn't selling a course on it. he locked himself in a room and made money.
Yeah, like they kept those algorithms locked down.
That's what everyone would do.
Because again, if you do, let's say, I'm sure there are patterns out there which some short-term traders are using, which are working like 90% of the time. I'm sure there's probably something out there. An event happens in the world, because these algorithms are so smart now as well. So you've got to think, if you're going to be a trader, you've got to compete with all these things, because most trading now is automated. It's done by a computer or an algorithm somewhere. I mean, there's even software out there that I know of, it's scraping Twitter, it's scraping the news, it's looking for different keywords about certain stocks, certain events, because that data is then sold into these firms who are then using that to trade.
They scrape Wall Street bets.
They scrape everything, yeah, exactly. So they're looking for sentiment, because they're not long-term investors.
It's in and out,
they're trying to get in
swing
and out.
Trades and little.
And you might see some of the hedge fund as well who you might have heard something for buying the order flow or profit for order flow. What's the real technical term?
It's payment for order
Sorry,
flow.
payment for order, not profit for order, but they do profit from it. But being able to pay for the orders up front from a broker, it's actually illegal in the UK. I think it might be legal in Europe.
It's how Robinhood makes them
Yeah.
money.
So you sell the orders to a company who gets to see the orders in advance. They know that lots of buys or sells are coming in, and then they can front load their orders.
That is cheeky.
And that's legal in America, which is crazy.
They're also the market maker.
But they're the market
They're the
maker as
person who places the order. So, you know, they
Then
make...
I'll put my order here, then put all these buy orders right after my order.
I'll place an order in front of that.
Yeah, and then just drop them all in.
So you could argue they're beating the market, but not in a traditional way. They are making the market. And you could argue, well, whether that's right or wrong, but...
I know you probably don't want to talk about books all the time, but I do think that people love books, and I think that people, you know, want recommendations for what to read. I'll put a list of like some of my favorite books together. I'll ask you, have you got any books?
Mine's just Psychology of Money.
Okay.
That's my favorite.
It's a classic. It's really good. Very accessible.
Do you know he wrote that in 30 days?
Really?
Yeah. So he had 12 months to write it, and the classic Psychology.
As always,
he just delayed it. And then his wife went to him, write the bloody book. Yeah. So he just locked himself in a room in one December and just bashed it out. And
no way.
7 million copies it's sold.
I know it's gone crazy that one, hasn't it?
He's done very well out of it. But it deserves it. But if you look at the book as well, it's like it's story,
it's stories,
then explanation, story, explanation, and it's like the universal language of story.
It is,
and I think. People obsess about money with the how, not the why.
Yeah.
And what he answered was the why, and showed, you know, there could be someone who's worth 100 million who is willing to go to prison because they want to be a billionaire because they feel poor in their community.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and like that is fascinating to everyone, isn't it? So I think that's a great book. Well, like, have you got any
favorite one? You know what? I was thinking about this. Other than money, which I think is a good basis for UK investors just to get started, so it covers everything. There is a book which is a bit underrated. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. Mm-hmm. And this is a book which is decades old, and the author, I think it's Thomas Stanley, I think it's by. They interviewed like 500 millionaires in America. I think it must be 80s or 90s. Anyway, they interviewed them because they wanted to find out, well, how did you make all your money? How are you successful? Or, you know, what's the secret? And it was really, really interesting. And the bottom line, I don't want to spoil the story for anyone, but really, the people that are really wealthy basically don't buy new clothes. They drive used cars. And he painted this picture of the average millionaire in America was like, age 50 something. They lived in a very average house. They drove a 7-year-old car. They went on one holiday a year. Most of them owned a business, but they just lived very frugally. Whereas it's quite interesting because most people would imagine if you're a millionaire, you go on flash holidays, you got a fancy car. But actually, those people weren't. If someone has a big house and a fancy car, all you're really learning is that they've got a big house and a fancy car.
They spend a lot of money on those things.
They spend a lot of money, which could mostly be debt. But yeah, that's a really interesting one. So yeah, that's A Millionaire Next Door. I'd love to do an updated version of that in the UK. Yeah. So it would just all be inside the M25, and it'd be like anyone who bought a house in the 70s or 80s. Yeah. But yeah, if I don't know if there's someone's listening who could facilitate that, who's got data, who could contact 500 multi-millionaires and just who are open to sharing their journey. I think it'd be similar actually.
Multi-millionaires, yeah. I think if you talk about like low single digits, it would be just anyone that's retired over 60. The average millionaire in the UK would probably be over 60. Well, that's it.
And that shatters the dream or the vision that if you're a millionaire, you must be flashing the cash. But actually most of these people have very sensible, boring investments. Yeah, it's pensions, it's property, it's index funds, it's boring stuff. But it's a real eye-opening book.
So all the people we see flashing the cash are all just pretenders?
Well, not necessarily pretenders.
Behave, mate.
Not pretenders. Imagine if I just pull out a big gold chain with diamonds on it as well.
Look, pretending midget on my necklace. No pretending about that.
No pretending, yeah. Because I mean, if you're a millionaire, you should be enjoying life. I would hate to be a millionaire. You go on one holiday a year and you just got a big house and a car. Like, I think life is about experiences.
You know, I agree. I think that's a good balance because I'm going to keep talking about books in this one. But there's you might remember in Psychology of Money, there's a story about a guy called Ronald Reed. He was a guy in America. He worked as a janitor and like a mechanic. Super boring job. He dies, he passes away, and he donates like $8 million to charity. And didn't even tell his family. They're like, what? Yeah. How have you got this much money? And so basically, every paycheck, he would just buy stocks, like blue chip stocks. I think it was like IBM and other stocks. But he just kept buying them for his entire life, basically, and just kept stacking. But you wouldn't know because this guy would literally he would go into a hospital cafe with like secondhand clothes on, looking a bit like a tramp. You know, people would offer to buy him coffee, and he dies a multi-millionaire.
It's like, I'll buy your whole life, mate.
Yeah, which is a bit extreme, but I agree with that's probably too extreme. I want some sort of balance. My personal view is, what's the point doing all this investing stuff to die rich? I'm not trying to die rich, definitely. But it is interesting. You can go the extreme.
That's one of my books. We'll get to that in a second. But I think with The Millionaire Next Door, I think the lesson is as well, perception of wealth is not aligned with what wealth is. Most people think a millionaire is someone with a Lambo. Really, that's someone with 10, 20 million.
Or
it's like
someone,
at that level.
like you said,
you know, like the luxury holidays and all that. You need millions, not 2 million quid. You know, because otherwise a Lamborghini will drain that in a few years, exactly. You know.
And I know we've both done videos on this, but when you ask people, okay, well, what does someone in the top 10% of the UK earn? And it's way less than you think.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you look at the studies and it's like people assume to be in the top 10%, you're making like £250,000 a year. But at the moment, I think it's about 60 something, 65.
I think 650 grand is the top 1%.
That's the top 1%.
Yeah.
Now, obviously the top 1% starts getting
silly.
But
it's earners, So it's like, there's a lot of people that don't earn any money, but they've been billionaires.
Yeah,
you know,
obviously there's people, but you realise the perception of wealth is very, very weird.
And people think that someone on 100 grand is like uber rich.
It's wealthy. But going back to that book as well, there were plenty of people in that book, again, who earned loads of money, but spent it. Also, you had these doctors in America who earned like $300,000-$500,000 a year, but they had no wealth because they've got 3 cars, a boat, big house, country club membership, and they don't save anything.
Yeah,
so the savings rate's
one of the books that I've got is Die with Zero, because I like that
Bill
book.
Perkins.
Yeah, like I tried to pick some books that weren't just how to invest. So Die with Zero, which is this idea that you should spend it all before you die.
I did enjoy that book.
I know you don't need a book to tell me that.
You don't need a book. You wrote that book.
Although I will say it's different when you've got tens of millions of dollars.
I'll spend it all.
You got to get off to zero first. You can't just ride zero the whole way.
I'm done with get broke or don't try.
For we were talking about story before as well. The book that got me into personal finance was The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah, classic one.
I know it's a bit lame, but like that I think for anyone who's like, I think that's a better Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I was about
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Obviously, is one of the books, and I can understand why it got so popular, but.
Robert's gone a bit off the rails.
He's gone a bit off the rails, and it's a bit
Why? What's he doing?
He crazy, man.
Yeah, he's crazy. I'll let Damien say it's his podcast.
Smoking something.
He got loco.
Yeah. He's gone like red pill kind of conspiracy.
Yeah.
The bit of aliens. He might even think that the Earth's flat. I don't know. He's kind of.
It's like telling people to buy gold, buy silver. The world's going to end. Stock market's going to crash. Yeah. But it's weird coming from the guy who's kind of promoting, not stopping your time and money and investing and property and stuff. But
there's a lot of these. This is interesting about like who to listen to. The charlatans of the book. So Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is probably one of the most overrated books.
But it's weird how people still value that one. It's weird as well. There's a bit of paradox because
Do you know that book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's all lies, basically.
Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. So at the start of the book, sounds really good, right? Because from what I remember, he says at the start of the book, he says, I've interviewed like loads of business titans and loads of rich people, and I'm going to tell you what they told me. And you think, this is going to be great. It's like a collection of all the best knowledge.
Rockefeller was the guy.
Yeah.
I think you said he had access to.
And you keep reading it. First it gets weirder and weirder, put it that way. And then you don't believe half the stuff he says. But then also that it gets very mumbo jumbo. It's all about, mindset, which is important, but it goes too much into the mindset of just imagining you're going to be rich and thinking about things and not giving up. There's some good lessons in there, but it's very overrated. And there's definitely nothing about investing in there or assets and liabilities. So it's weird because it's like, if you search by top sellers in finance and investing, it's always up there. I don't really. It might be up there because it's pop. I don't know if
he said that he interviewed all these people after they were dead, so they couldn't contest it. And like some of them are like ruthless business tycoons who've written their own books, and none of them talk about mindset. They talk about like buying up competition and owning markets and monopolies. And he was like, you just got to think about how you want to be rich, and it will happen. So
maybe people like the book because it's like
simple,
and they're like, I can do that. Maybe it's just my mindset.
What? You could be right. It's
positive attraction.
The Secret is another one, right? It's like that vibes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. The Secret
kind of vibe.
Put it out into the universe and it will come to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that is definitely not what I talk about on my channel. We talk about investing. You've got to do something, because if you do nothing, well, inflation. That's another story.
One of the worst things that I see in my world is scammers who pretend to be me or the podcast and then try and get money out of people who follow us. And sadly, these scammers are getting better and better by the day, which is one of the reasons that we're really happy that we're partnering up with Vanta, who help businesses be secure and then prove that they're secure. Vanta automates compliance for stuff like GDPR, ISO 27001, SOC 2 and more, helping businesses build customer trust. The beauty of Vanta is they save companies a lot of time and money because proving you're secure without them really is an enormous faff. It can take months of work and form filling. Over 9,000 companies like Atlassian, Flow Health and Cora use Vanta to manage their risk and prove their security in real time. If you need to prove that your business is secure and compliant, you can get $1,000 off by going to vanta.com/makingmoney. I've left a link in the description for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill's book.
I also got Who Moved My Cheese? Do you know that book?
I don't know that one.
Yeah.
No.
So when I wanted to...
Quite old book.
Yeah, it's quite old. It's really short, a real short story as well. You learn... I haven't got the attention to read big, thick books. I like academic papers, but not.
Yeah.
But yeah, Who Moved My Cheese? When I wanted to quit my job to go full-time YouTube, Sasha Yanshin recommended it to me and said, read that. And it's basically about, grabbing opportunities when they present themselves. Yeah. It's about a load of rats, but it's good.
Yeah. Very good, yeah.
And that gave it to me when I was like 13 or something.
Yeah.
Like 15,
interesting.
Yeah. It's about like...
Same with the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Same.
Not being comfortable and sitting there and, going after the opportunity.
Yeah, you got to go after it, yeah.
And I think that's like an important lesson for people. This.
I think this all ties back to, everything we're talking about today. Investing, making money for yourself, because it's not going to come to you.
You got no bother chasing cheese, have you? You quit your job and went all in. I did.
Well, not many people know. It's a bit of an exclusive, for the podcast.
I know you didn't want anyone to tell that, but I was like, I'm using that.
So yeah. So basically, going back to the start of the conversation, but I spent my career. It sounds weird saying I spent my career. I'm an old man. I worked in IT sales effectively, so it's selling technology. Could be laptops, servers, data center, cybersecurity into different companies, public sector, etc. So I did that for nearly 10 years in different resellers and different vendors. And then basically, when I parted ways with my last job, for some reason, which I'm not really sure why, I think I'd had enough of IT sales because it's quite a cutthroat world. And at that point, I was just like, you know what, I want to do something for myself. I've been watching all the American YouTubers, the finance YouTubers, didn't find many UK voices. And I was like, I'm going to do this. Naively, obviously, because you don't do that thinking about it. It comes back to like just buying a stock, which because you saw someone, your friend told you. So yeah, I started the YouTube channel that day with no job, and was like, I'll give this a go for a year. And touch wood, it's gone all right. 3 videos. I did 3 videos a week when I started. Which was brutal. I mean, that was just working. That was just
doing
script,
like 1 week,
film,
right?
edit. He just wanted even 9 days.
No.
Damien, relax. He didn't do anything else. Didn't have a podcast to run or anything else like that. Yeah. But yeah, I did. So yeah, I went into it full time. So that is bad advice. Don't do that if you're going to do a YouTube channel. But I knew that I couldn't have done IT sales job and do a YouTube channel. I would have no time left. So I thought, naively, I'm just going to do this from day dot, go for it. And that's where I ended up today. So you can get there. You don't have to want to do it full time, but I think it's good to show the journey because we're all different. There's not one size fits all. I think in this finance journey and investing journey, you think you just do this, you just get that. People don't do that. I don't do that. I'm an investing hypocrite. Damien's an investing hypocrite. You're an investing. We're all hypocrites, aren't we? Right? No. To a certain extent.
No, you definitely.
He doesn't own any individual stocks.
There was like passive investing, getting into a fund. I'm like, Damien, I just made this money. He's like, wait, tell me a little bit about it. He's like, you piqued my interest. I was like, oh, look at this Solana trade. He's like, tell me more.
Yeah,
I've got my 10% that I mess with, right?
That's it,
to keep my busy hands.
Yeah, because Melania coin is going to go to the moon, not financial advice.
It's not. No, it's not.
So how do you invest?
So the majority of my investing is exactly as I preach. It's low cost passive index funds, but I still have some individual stocks, which I did a video recently. The individual stocks have done really well because I pretty much bought all the bottoms in 2022.
You bought Alphabet, didn't you?
I got all the bottoms of most of those ones, but that has meant that part of my portfolio looks quite big, but I don't add to that. So I've said to myself,
I've just left it.
That gets left there. It's not an insignificant sum of money, but all I add to is index funds. I don't spend any hour of my day looking at individual stocks anymore.
No more stock picking for you.
I don't say never say never, but I've got enough there that I'm kind of happy
to just watch it.
To watch it, let it slide.
You don't get tempted to tinker, have a little sell here.
A little bit. But
not when the market feels a bit racy as well. But it's more tempting when there's like they're down. That's when you start to go, oh, now Google looks more attractive. Exactly. Yeah. Not all-time highs.
That stuff's so difficult. And so on that point, I feel way more happy, no matter about all-time highs, putting my money into an index fund than I would do picking stocks. That's a psychological thing. But I just add to that and just make the most of it.
But if we had a downturn now and the market took 20% share, maybe you would go,
potentially,
okay,
I'm not someone who has loads of spare cash on the side to do that, because I think timing the market is an absolute fool's game. But people are still going to do it no matter what.
I got a dip bag.
I'm sure you do.
You got to.
I'm sure you do.
I have everything in the market at all points. Like any spare cash straight in the index.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just easier to buy. So that's what I do, and I just make efficient use of ISAs, all stocks and shares ISA, and self-invested personal pension. Because like you, being self-employed, looking after myself, no one's paying into my pension, so I need to do that myself.
And the benefit for a limited company is like really good, isn't it?
You've got a limited company and you're a director. Putting into a pension is so tax efficient. There's no corporation tax to pay. If you're a higher rate earner as well, there's great tax breaks. That money just goes straight in there, so you haven't to extract it from the business.
That's I think probably the most valuable thing I've learned on
so
the podcast.
Valuable.
Like, I can pay less tax if I just put it into my pension.
Yeah.
Like, sweet.
The
See you, tax man. You're not getting this.
The UK, like as much as people, crap on the UK, for investing perspective, like we've got a lot of, cool, you don't want to call them tax loopholes, but we got a lot of benefits.
Easy access accounts like ISAs and pensions, they're world class.
An investing account you can put 20 grand a year into with no taxes, and it's flexible. You can pull money out at any point. I don't really know any other countries that got that. And Americas have got their Roth IRA, but that's like $6,000 they can put in a year. We can put £20,000 in, and then pensions you can put 60 grand a year in, up to 100%.
You got the junior accounts as well.
Got the junior accounts.
I got my son set up.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in a family.
And take your tax
it's crazy.
bracket down.
Yeah, you can reduce that. But all this stuff is most people don't know.
This is the thing. Instead, we're all here buying individual stocks instead of getting less tax and
there's far more general investment accounts than there are stocks and shares ISAs, which is a bit
going back to the journey, which sounds like we've all had, really. We all started off in stuff we probably shouldn't do, playing around the market, using the wrong accounts, finding these stocks and shares ISAs and pensions so late in our life. But no one's out there to tell us. Podcasts like this, we're trying to get to people who've just never...
I just wish someone got to me earlier.
Yeah, that's it.
I found you, mate. Don't worry. Daddy's here.
Papa. This is going to be the thumbnail now, is it? Daddy's here. Daddy's home or something.
Damo's just like going to be like a big pig with like lots of nipples, and then he's got...
I have not been speaking.
He's got him on one tee, you on one tee.
He sends me daddy pig memes all the time.
I do send Damien a very weird Peppa Pig meme. Because at some point he'd reference Daddy Pig and
He's like, how's the video going? I'll send him the view chart and I just get this like Daddy Pig emoji.
It's like flashing in multicolours. It's very
and it's
weird.
Got it's like weird, it's creepy.
If someone looked at mine and Damien's like WhatsApp messages, they would think, what's going on here? We definitely get reported.
Then you're both cancelled.
I think most people can relate, right, with the WhatsApp. So what about then, let's talk about the markets in particular. What about US dominance? How do you think about that? And are you concerned about like the exposure that your global index has? This
is a great topic. I think I could talk about this one all day long. And I've made so many videos on this one. Yeah, it's always like S&P 500 versus global index. What should I do? And it's almost like saying, oh, well, what about QQQ? What about the tech stocks? Why don't I just put... basically, why don't I just put all of my money in the stuff that's done really well because surely it's going to continue? Well, we all know that might not. However, nowadays, things are a bit more confusing. So back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, S&P 500 or American stocks, for example, these stocks would do most of their business all inside the US. So you'd get no international exposure to companies that did their business abroad. Nowadays, almost every big company in the S&P 500 or in the US market are all the big stocks, and they do a lot of their business outside. So I checked the latest data is the S&P 500, it's about 71% of their business is done nationally and 29% is done internationally. So that's quite a big chunk. And it's about the opposite, if not a bit more extreme when it comes to UK stocks. So the UK market, 75% of their income the FTSE 100 comes from international. So it's a very weird market. So I look at those things and think, okay, well, the traditional argument has said that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to be well diversified. But is the American market diversified enough? And you could make a strong argument.
The 70-30 is reflective of the size of the market.
It roughly is.
Because 65% of the global stock market's America. So it's almost like they have a global
They do.
equity.
But then you also think, so like I mentioned on the FTSE 100, you've got plenty of companies. They're not amazing companies, but you've got plenty of big companies that sell everywhere. You've got other companies in Europe like LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy.
You know that one, don't you?
Yeah, you know that one.
I'm familiar.
He was pretending I've never heard of these brands before. But you've got all these companies. They're not as there's lots of household names out there, and just because they're not headquartered in the US, does that mean I don't want to own them? Because if we come back to that position of having a bit of humility, none of us have any idea which company their share price is going to do really well. Going back to like the research and the books, there's a great book called 100 Baggers. So it talks about companies which have 100 bags. That's companies that have 100x their share price, right? And there's only been during the period that he looked at the market, there's been like 365 companies who have ever 100 bags in, I think it was like a 40-year period. It might be more, could be less. You have to correct me on that one. And the median time it took a company to 100 bag it's like 16 years. So anyway, bit of a tangent on that one.
From like a penny stock to...
Well, it could be from anywhere,
Is
basically.
Monster one of them?
Yeah, so I was just about
Monster
to say,
Energy.
right, just because it's a crazy one. Now, NVIDIA has now overtaken it to be the best ever stock there's ever been from performance-wise.
NVIDIA is the best ever.
Yeah, from IPO to now, because it overtook it massively recently. But before that, it was Monster Energy. So it wasn't a tech stock. It wasn't a crazy household name like Apple. It was Monster Energy, which is crazy, really.
And which is pretty bad for you, right?
Well, yeah, arguably, yeah.
Not for your wealth, mate.
I'm not a fan myself. But again, we're going to go on all sorts of tangents this one because this question is so fascinating. But so you got diversification you could argue you got diversification in the S&P 500, but then I would argue because we're so global now in the way companies sell that just because a company's headquartered in the US, it could get all of its revenue from Europe and the UK. So it's not as easy now as just saying global or US for diversification. I always default back to having been a bit more global. If you added my individual stocks, I'm probably weighted a bit more toward the US, but that's the way the market has deemed the values of the companies. So I always default back to just saying being global, because I don't know for the next 10, 20, 30 years if European stocks, emerging markets, can't research the future. Some people think you can, as I said earlier, but I would default to that. But I can play devil's advocate for all sides.
This is the point. Like I could argue now against you or for this argument really strongly, and both are compelling. And this is why I go global, because I think it's like, you're making a decision if you go America, aren't you?
Yeah, to a certain extent
you're betting on the market,
exactly.
like to a point.
Yeah.
Whereas you can just own the globe, and that has served people very well. Yeah. And then you can go get on with your life and focus on your day job.
That the annoying thing, I suppose, for global investors like us is that we look at S&P 500 charts and we're like, you know what? That's quite a lot. You miss out on a couple of % a year. That's a lot in your lifetime. And then you say, should we just continue with that? Because the S&P 500, although it is a passive index fund, there's a committee who chooses the stocks that go onto it. So I forget if it's every month or every 3 months, but they meet to basically demote the crap ones and put new companies in. Now, a global index fund isn't really doing that. It's just tracking the market. So the S&P 500 almost gets a little bit of active tracking. They kick out the crap and they put.
Well, there was a debate if Tesla should go in. There's a debate around like MicroStrategy. With Tesla, it rose so quick that they were going, is this just a bubble? So should we kind of include it to kick it back out again?
That's right.
Obviously, it made it into the index.
They don't just put you in because of your size. Yeah. So they do look at like volume and stuff and ownership. So it's quite an interesting one. But I always come back to that ignorant position that says, I have no idea what's going to happen to the market, what company's going to do best. Because let's talk about this new AI revolution, right? So AI, you could argue, is the future. Probably, yeah? AI, robotics, automation, probably the future. But the internet was the future back in the .com bubble. Cars were the future back in 20s, 30s, 40s, right? But the companies that started then weren't the ones that succeeded now. And I don't know how you can identify which ones are going to succeed. So it may be the big companies of today, which might end up being the winners. It could be the OpenAIs, it could be the Teslas, or it might be a company
from China
that's never started yet, or from China or from India, who's literally 2 people in a shed right now who could turn out to be the biggest company in the world. And do I want to bet that they're going to be in America? They might be. There's a good chance they might be, but why do you need to bet? I don't know.
I mean, like, I think you said it in one of your videos, like the performance of the past 40 years or whatever doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. So America's been dominant for so long. China's just released this AI and it shook the whole stock market and crypto market in no one saw it coming. So like just that kind of makes me feel I'm happy that I'm in a global, and I'd rather stick to global, because if suddenly China just goes like that and America goes like that and you've got it all in the S&P 500, it's going to hurt you a lot more than if you're in a global fund.
I think so, but I could be wrong. Like Damien, I could make a very good case for S&P 500.
Because the American market is structured in a way that supports that it's in their DNA.
It's in their DNA, and also like any national government, their job is to look after, not look after the stock market, but they're going to promote their own market. They're going to have good tax strategies or low corporation
and they're
strategies.
So big and powerful that they can do that through force.
They're going to dominate that through tariffs.
Like literally, if their market starts to slide, they will push against the world. And so they've got tools to put the dollar. I mean, the dollar is so dominant, right? So I think even if America does slide, it's a long way down.
Yeah.
And I reckon that you could pick either strategy and do very well for 100 years.
I think the bottom line of this argument is it almost doesn't matter which one you pick. I think there's far more important things to worry about, and that is getting money into the market for as long as you can,
your contributions,
as consistently as you can.
Your contributions.
Those are the core investing foundations, which sounds so easy. It's like a fitness influencer saying, right, so if you want to get some big muscles,
I already do. You've got big muscles.
Yeah, I've already seen this man doesn't need any bigger muscles; they're massive. But if you want even bigger ones, you go to the gym, 4 or 5 times a week, and you need to progressive overload. You need to do these exercises, and that sounds obvious because you're like, well, doesn't everyone know that? But everyone doesn't do that.
Yeah, and instead they're like, let me take this pill, or let me do this special diet or routine.
Well, everyone wants the Ozempic fat jab, and they can get themselves slim. And that might work for the short term, but that's not the long-term answer to your diet, is it?
And it's also like, do the compound lifts to eat well and go to sleep. These are the things. Whereas people will be like, oh, if I hold the weight like this or like this, this is the debate.
Too much. Yeah.
It's
do I do 10 reps or 11 reps?
Yeah.
When I think, just choose one, but just do the reps.
And do the consistent.
Or they'll go to the gym and not eat right, or go to the gym and sleep 1 hour, and it's like, why am I not growing? Because you're not eating right, because you're not sleeping. So it's like following all the steps.
What about market weighting though? So one thing that I do think about is, market cap weighted indexes and then equal weighted. And, you look at it and the equal weighting surprises you at how well they've performed over the years.
Yeah.
Sorry, just for some of our listeners who may be new to the channel, please explain what equal weighting is.
Go ahead, T.
No, mate. I'm here to hit the buzzer. Don't worry about it. You don't pay me for that. Tell us, please, expert.
Well, market weight's heavier and equal weight's lighter. No, basically, so a global index fund, right, or any.
I saw what you did there with the gym thing. That
was slick.
You get the best guess.
He's like a baby Damo, isn't he?
All hail Daddy Pig.
Oh no, don't! Anyway, you take me out like a dick.
This is going to make the podcast.
Leave the pig emojis in the comments, guys. Little Daddy Pig emojis.
We'll pick a winner in the comments section. Peppa Pig fans. So look, a passive index fund is organized. So you've got all the companies of the world, and it's like, okay, well, how do you sort them? So if you put £100 into a passive global index fund, how do you sort them? So market weight basically says the biggest companies in the world will get more of your money when you put it in. So they're sorted. So Apple is still the world's biggest company. Is it like 3.5 trillion or 3 trillion? Something?
It's like 5p in every pound will go to Apple.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is, so much bigger than the rest of the companies. So they're all just sorted by
bigger than
size.
the whole of the UK market.
Yes, we should put
just Apple.
That
so 4p will go to the UK, 5p will go to Apple.
Yeah, which is insane. So that's a traditional passive index, because you're letting the market cap, you're almost letting the market decide those weights. Because you think about it, okay, if you come back to the foundations of investing, why is Apple worth what it is? It's just, that is the price that the market, all of us have agreed it is. If we agree that we want to pay however many $240 it is per share or whatever it is now, that's what we've agreed. An equal weighted fund flips on its head and says, rather than doing that, we're going to put 1p for every £100 into every single company the same. And every 3 months, we will just sell the losers, sell the winners and buy the losers, if that makes sense. So they just keep balancing it. I think it's every 3 months. Now that strategy over certain time periods has done well. I think over the latest time period, it's not done too well.
But I'm not too sure. We looked at this and I was pretty confident that like market cap weighted would have done well. And we showed that equal weighting had done very well for long periods of time.
Yeah, and it can.
At this again is like another debate that I don't think you need to have with yourself sometimes. No, but there will be periods where the equal weight does better, and people will be like, "Look, I told you."
I know. But again, that is an active strategy, I would argue.
It is
equal weighting, because a passive strategy is letting the market decide the weights, letting the market decide. Like anything you buy, the market decides how much. A Lamborghini is priced like a Lamborghini because that's what people have happily paid for a Lamborghini. The price of milk is the price of milk because that's what the market is determined. Milk could be £10 for a bottle, but they would probably sell 20 times less if they charge that. So the price of a stock is just what the market agrees it is right now. And we're obviously just guessing what we think it's worth based on future cash flows, which is the nerdy way, because we don't know the future.
Yeah. The issue is the biggest companies might just become bigger because of inflows from passive funds.
That's
so
a really good argument.
Gets all this money flowing into it and just keeps growing because they're hoovering up all the cash.
That's always an argument that people, active investors, bring out. They say, "Oh, index funds have completely skewed the market," but that argument was basically made when index funds were created back in the 60s and 70s. There's posters which say that index funds and passive investing is anti-American.
What's American is paying loads of fees.
Exactly. Index funds have basically lost a lot of people a lot of money over time because fees have come down. Because active managers have finally actually got to get their act together and prove themselves. And it's funny you said that actually, because I think the spread now, there was, it might be a couple of years ago, but passive investing overtook active by a couple of percentage points.
It's 51%.
It's about 50-50. So there is still so much active money in the market these days from institutions, from private hedge funds. So those big market moves you see when companies release their earnings, like they're going to be this quarter for the big tech firms, that is not passive index funds moving that. So people shouldn't be worried too much.
And you're talking about funds, right? You're not talking then about individual holdings from the retail market is huge.
The retail market's big.
When people are like passives overtaken active, that's only funds.
Exactly.
Then 10% of my portfolio is in, like individual stocks. So's yours. So the large majority of the market is still active.
Yeah. There's a huge active market. And actually, I've made a video on this as well because in order for you to buy passively, you do need an active market.
I was about to say, we need active.
We do need that. So, and it comes back to human psychology. Like, we can't all just buy passively.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work like that. Because in fact, anytime we buy passively anyway, there's someone selling the underlying stocks at some point, right? Anytime we buy, someone's selling. Because there's plenty of people who are taking money from their investments and living their life at the moment. And plenty of people over the next few decades who are going to retire using their index funds and their investments. So not everyone can do it. Not everyone will do it, but most people should do it.
Thank God for the belief that people think that they can beat the market.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't even exist.
It's true. In fact, thank you everyone out there watching who is an active investor who thinks they're amazing and God's gift to investing. My heart goes out to you because I'll buy my boring investing index fund and I'll probably outperform most people. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Thanks for the help.
Yeah, thanks for the help.
There's a best performing asset ever, Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
What do you think about crypto?
I'm definitely a fan of Bitcoin.
Good man.
As something which is very interesting. It's the only asset class which is completely outside of the traditional finance world. So I think there is a lot of value there. There's lots of downsides to it. I definitely think the rest of the crypto market is mostly scams of people wanting to just make money from people, aka Trump and Melania, as a few examples. I do think there's some space to have a bit of Bitcoin in your portfolio. Not financial advice, obviously at your own risk, but because it is that completely separate asset class. It's not.
But you do see it as an asset class.
I certainly do.
I think it's the kind of cat's out of the bag now, right? Like it's so big, it's over $1 trillion.
No, it's obviously big because of the network effect that people are buying it. So part of that, because the closest thing is to compare it to would be gold, right? Because people buy gold because there's a limited supply in the world, and it's almost separate to central banks and all this kind of thing. And it's a store of value. Now, Bitcoin could be a store of value if people use it as that. It's very volatile because people aren't just using it as that. But I do think it has there's a strong argument for it. I would still not be putting all my portfolio in it. And my focus is always going to be on index funds and using tax-advantaged accounts. But I definitely think Bitcoin has a place somewhere.
This is. I think it's the moderation in the debate. It's like people are either like it's rat poison squared, or if you've not got every penny in it, you're an idiot. And it's like it's so. Like
it's very polarizing.
Someone commented in the comments on YouTube, they're like, once they started talking about Bitcoin, I like stopped watching. And I was just like, what would you say to people who like just hate it? Do you think they should like do a little bit of research, keep an open mind? Or
I'd ask why. Why do you feel so strongly about it? Why do you feel like, why do you get emotional over it?
Because people don't get emotional over it.
I'm genuinely interested. Like, why does it make you angry?
Because the kind of the older I get, I sound like an old man, but I'm all for just pick what works for you, whatever strategy you want, and just go for it. You know, the biggest thing, whatever you do, you're going to have to do it for a long time. Now, please don't pick Bitcoin because it's gone up the most recently, because that strategy is terrible for almost everything that's ever happened.
Especially because it's existed for like 15 years.
Exactly. The history is not very good. Yeah. And again, you could argue, you could say Nvidia, it's gone up the most recently. Therefore, lots of people are buying it. It's one of the most traded stocks every single day. It's the most traded stock on the stock market. It's overtaken Tesla now. Tesla used to be just consistently the most traded stock on the stock market. So I think there's a place. And I think for our generation as well, you know, I'm 36, so we're technically millennials, which is really weird to say that. Yeah. But I at least when talking to our generation, if you said to them, oh, do you buy gold? They'd be like, no, I'm not a boomer. They'll say, but do you buy crypto or do you buy Bitcoin at least? They'll say, yeah, I got some. Yeah. Bitcoin's something like most people have got, but they don't like to talk about it too much. And certainly I don't talk about it too much on my channel. I think we've got bigger problems to worry about in the country. Like most people don't even use an ISA or a pension. But I still think if you want to get that next level and you've got a bit of money and you want to speculate a bit, I think it's better than gold as a store of value. I think it is a very good store of value. I'm definitely not, I'm not anti it. I'm pro it. I'm pro to a certain extent putting a little bit of money into it. Your speculative part, if you want to have 5 or 10% of your portfolio in speculative stuff,
1% in Bitcoin. If it does what it promises, 1% will be enough. If it dies and crashes, 1% won't kill you. And I think, you know, if we all sit here and say we can't forecast the future, we can't research the future, and we all don't really know what's going on, so we just buy a global index, maybe an extension of a global index is a bit of Bitcoin. You know, because it is like it's just part of the wider global economy now, right?
It definitely is.
I do agree, and I think where I lose it is like people are like, oh, this crypto and that one, and you know,
that market. It's wild that people can just scam their audience consistently. It blows my mind that it keeps happening.
Got it in our comments. Someone wrote, "Oh, hi guys, I've lost my seed phrase." For people that don't know, that's how you like secure your crypto. So literally on our video, they're like, "I've lost my seed phrase." This is my seed phrase, and wrote out all the words, and so that people will be tempted to like try and steal their money, and then they'll be like, "Can you help me recover my money?" And it's basically just a scam. Like there's so many different. So I think that's why it gets bad reputation.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the dark side of investing in finance, and people are going to slide into it because there are promises of riches. And the worst thing is, it's like the lottery. Every week in this country, on a Wednesday and a Saturday, or whatever it is, or Friday, someone's going to win the lottery most likely. And similar with some cryptos, some of the early people will make a lot of money, but for one person to make £1 million, a lot of people have to lose much smaller amounts together.
You're taking someone else's liquidity.
Basically.
When you make money, someone else is losing money.
Yeah, it's a zero-sum game.
And it's probably a lot of money because it's so aggressive and volatile.
So you just got to be so careful out there. But I mean, it does apply to most investments. I think it's a good story for most investments is that we don't know which investments are going to succeed. So my philosophy is own all of them. Yeah. And there's never been a better time to be able to own all of these investments. Like we said,
it's easy now.
It's so easy now. Like remember going back to what I said earlier, ETFs and mutual funds, all these things, and index funds, they're only been invented for a couple of decades where they got really popular. Before then, it's unheard of.
Yeah, I'm buying an investment property at the minute, and I'm going through that experience as someone who is very overweight to the stock market. And the whole way through, I'm like, I should have just bought a bloody ETF. Yeah. Like we were getting a bill for like solicitor $1,000, but then he's like, oh, and I also need 50 quid to check your ID.
Of course you do.
And you need you to pay for our solicitor on this. And I'm like, what? It's like the fees, the complication, the delay. It's been months, and the whole time I'm like, I could have literally just gone, boop. and and it would have been done. It's
mad, isn't it?
So and I'm sure like the leverage is the reason I'm buying, because I can get the mortgage impact and becoming a greedy evil landlord, and you know.
I can't wait till Damien appears on Slumlord or something. Some Channel 4 documentary. Matt Allwright, Road
just
Traders.
hustle harder, bro.
Yeah, It is crazy, and I think it's funny, the UK actually, isn't it? If you ask someone on the street, what's the best thing to invest in? Most people, I think, would still say property, because you can see it. It's physically.
Have you got 50
grand in cash?
It depends on it. If you ask an 18-year-old, I don't know if they're going to say.
But you're going to say something else.
They'd say XRP, wouldn't they?
They would say crypto token. Because people, we did a video on funds or something, and someone was like, "Yeah, forget all that, mate. You're a fool if you don't buy Bitcoin and get like X% a year." And I'm just like. Yeah, you're really simplifying it. It's not that simple. Like,
well done to me, and I'm loving this. Like,
change man.
You should see. I mean, you can't speak to all these great minds and then just be like, they're all telling you buy a passive index fund, and I'm like, no, I'm buying crypto.
Why are you rich?
Yeah, exactly. You got to take in some of this advice on board.
No, so. I had someone in the comments today. I did a video about. I don't know, average returns or something. And they were like, why would anyone buy an ETF at 9% a year when you can get 100% in Bitcoin?
That was pretty much.
Is this a serious?
And I see this comment all the time, though.
Well, it's reasonable. I think this is, genuine people who are new to investing, and I can't really blame them. They say, well, why would I buy something which has performed worse? I buy the stuff that's performed good, right? I totally get that. And that's a trap we fall into as humans, because basically we see patterns, we see the most recent performance, and this happens time and time again. And all the bubbles you've seen in history, which you can go back to, the tulip bubble, the South Sea bubble, the dot-com bubble. We, as humans, we chase the stuff that's gone up the most recently because we think it's going to continue.
But if you also look at it like entry level to getting a property in London, for example, it's crazy. Whereas you can buy 100 quid worth of Bitcoin, and because it's only been around for 15 years, all the young people, all they've seen is like Bitcoin going like that over like the last 15 years.
It's hard to tell a 20-year-old that 15 years ain't a long time. It's like, that's my whole life, mate.
Because we're not trying to be the richest person in the graveyard here. Right? But that's why investing is so difficult, though, because it sounds easy. It goes back to fitness and eating well. It's like some of it is so boring. Again, you've got to progressively overload your muscles if you want to grow them. Yeah, but that requires a lot of hard work and eating the right diet over many, many years.
Consistency.
You see a little bit of progress week to week, but it's really, really hard. And that also is why most people just won't start and do it. And people say you're preaching very basic stuff, but most people don't do this. What's the latest stat? It's like 7% of people have got stocks and shares ISAs in the UK, or whatever the numbers are in any given day.
Cash ISA.
Loads of people save money, so they understand that in the UK we're good at saving. I know a lot of people don't do a lot of people struggle to save anything, but those who do, there's a lot of money out there in premium bonds, in short-term.
There's like 1.8 trillion.
There's loads.
Cash
now, some of that is for short-term use, but a lot of that I would wager is on people that have never wanted to invest it and are quite scared about investing because they don't know the next step because no one's told them. We've got Martin Lewis, fantastic about this, people saving money, getting good deals on their home utility, save a bit of money here. But that next step of investing, it should be easier.
It's like the old phrase, I'll just keep the money under my mattress.
Yeah, under the mattress.
And that's what they did. It's like savings account under my mattress.
Can you blame the nation for not trusting the banks when they caused the global financial crisis?
I know.
Yeah.
And like, unfortunately, we link investing with banks, even though they're not the same. Barclays is not.
Yeah.
It's a company you can buy, but it's not the stock market. But we tie these two things together, don't we?
Yeah.
HSBC and investing are the same thing somehow, even though they're not.
It's a shame, really, but channels like this, podcasts like this out to the nation, and our channels, hopefully we try and do our bit, really. But I don't know if you come up with any other exciting ways to get this message across, which can be quite boring. But Damien does it pretty well. You do it pretty good.
I want to talk about global crisis.
How do we fix Britain?
How do we get people excited? Let's talk about the impending doom that is the globe. So it feels like we've been through a lot in the last few years. And I think we had an economist sit opposite us that said that 50% of all of the biggest crashes over the last 100 years have been since the year 2000.
Yeah.
The market is a lot crashier nowadays. How do you kind of rationalize this, and how do you look at the world that feels like it's changing? It feels like America's like pulling up the drawbridge. It feels like China. It feels for the first time like we're in a different kind of spot, doesn't it? This time is different,
This is a great argument as well. Now, this it reminds me of one of my favorite charts. Again, if you zoom out on, there's a really cool graphic. It's got like the S&P 500, and it's got all the crisis and recessions that we've seen. And all that reminds me of the world is always changing. Things are always changing. They're not predictable at all. COVID is one good example. And this just reminds me that, well, it comes back to the way you invest. I just invest with a way that says, I have no idea what's going to happen. Our enemy for all of us is inflation. And what you do after that is up to you. But the thing we need to invest in is assets. And assets can be anything. Stocks and shares is like, a popular one. Gold could be one. Bitcoin could be one. But property could be one. But we need to invest in some kind of asset. As long as we know that, after that, fill your boots, do what you want to do. Not your financial advisor, pick something. But you have to have some kind of assets. And I think, at least with the stock market the way it is now, generally on how easy it is to access, the fact that we can put a few quid in and be owners of companies is amazing. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Because in decades gone by for our parents' generation, there was no way that you could get into the stock market for 25 quid or a pound.
Without any fees. The dealing fees alone would be 25 quid. You need to invest $1,000 quid to justify it.
Exactly.
And like, that's a big leap for the first ever time to be like,
it's
give me £1,000 worth of BP.
And exactly, you'd be relying on someone on the phone to tell you what you should invest in. They say, oh, I've got this hot stock for you. It's called Xerox because, photocopying's the future, bro. Or
like, what is photocopying?
Yeah, what is photocopying? Yeah.
That didn't work for you, did it?
No, it didn't.
You're not qualified to hit the buzzer.
Damn it, I'm not good
It's like Thor's hammer. Like, it only works for me.
Yeah, it knows.
Isn't that funny though? But our generation, because we used floppy disks, didn't we? Well, just about, right? I remember having, for some homework, I'd put on a floppy disk, but no kid will never know what a floppy disk is now. They think it's the save icon.
Kids don't know what landline telephones are, or like analog clocks. Yeah, the clock with the hands. Is that what it's called?
Which is crazy.
Sounds about right.
You still have those, mate?
Yeah, no, but
clocks with the hands.
Honestly, because check it out. Because a lot of young people,
we got a watch.
I'm not a young person.
He's got a clock with a hand on his wrist.
A lot of young people have like Apple Watches, or they just have their phones, so they literally don't know how to tell the time because they don't use clocks anymore.
I know what you're saying.
But the bottom line is, the world is always changing. I personally don't worry about any of that stuff.
I always think, like, what kind of world would we need to live in where businesses aren't making money?
Yeah.
Where it's that bad that like people have stopped going out to try and make money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the end of the world, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, I think you've got worse problems to worry about. If that is, for example, if the stock market went to zero, which in theory that would have happened because money has no value anymore. We don't know. The next 10 or 20 years could be the worst time to invest ever. It could be the worst, but I would rather invest than not invest. We have to do something, basically. Yeah. And it all comes down to that. So I don't know what's happening in the future.
And like, even if the markets provide no return, what you've done is you've saved in a tax efficient way. Yeah. And I think if you're paying inside of a pension, for example, you're getting minimum 20% tax relief. You're probably getting an employer match as well, which is doubling your money. So you've got a really good return there. And it's got to drop in half basically for you to even, which would be one of the worst market crashes ever.
Of course it would. And one thing to note as well, we'd all be in the same position. Yeah. Right? We'd all be in it.
And you'd still have a pot of cash of some sort because it's not going to go to zero unless we're all in the street fighting over cat food.
Worst case, you've got a savings account which has lost you money, which is terrible, but you still got something.
You still got some savings. You still got some tax efficient savings.
And I don't really know another way to live life. You've got to do that without doing. And actually, going back to your point on pensions, this is a really important one. I think we sit here talking about investing, but almost everyone in the UK, if you have a workplace pension with auto enrollment, you're an investor. So it's in our benefit. And I think actually we could have a stronger country if actually more people were incentivized to know they own a little bit of the businesses they go and buy from every day.
I think about the boomer example and like how everyone sits here and goes, God, they had the red carpet rolled out in front of them. And then let's think of the life of a boomer. You had like the Cold War, you had the 70s, you had like strikes and Thatcher ripping up the country basically at points. And then you had the 90s.
And the dot-com bubble.
The dot-com bubble. They had the 90s where interest rates shot up and everyone was getting repossessed. And everyone's just like, oh, boomers had it so good. And think of like the lived experience was one of chaos, throughout it, where they had all these massive events that we look at and go like, they must have felt like the world was going to end.
Of course, yeah.
And they ended up at the end going, oh, look at all the money we got.
and that's it. And that's it. That's a story of long-term investing, really.
And I think that, maybe in 30 years, we'll all be sat here going, millennials have done all right.
We've done all right. We look at them with all their six in there. Yeah.
Gen Alpha, you're fucked.
They've all got Bitcoin and it went to zero. They're all just
enjoy the hotter weather. Global warming. Turn that thermostat right up, didn't you?
You'll be in your big warm house looking up like, you should have invested.
Yeah. But no, I think it, you know, we discredit that every generation has struggled or had these events where they literally thought that the world was going to end. Yeah. There was proper fear around nuclear war.
There was a doom headline in every newspaper in every week of every generation that's ever happened.
Yeah, stressful. It wasn't just like one day. It wasn't
one day. It was a prolonged period of time. And we're going to have the same. Yeah. And it's partly because fear sells, but also we live in an unpredictable world. And I go back to some of the books I read. One book's called The Black Swan, and it just reminds us about the future is unknowable. And things happen that we don't expect and we can't even think about. Yeah. For example, you could argue that the pandemic was unknowable, but which it was unknowable, but there's other things out there which are completely not even unthinkable, which might happen. Yeah. Flash crashes like we've had with DeepSeek, for example, which wiped out loads of money off the stock market, mostly recovered, but all these things are basically part of the market. So that the sooner you just embrace that the chaos. This is the chaos, this is the roller coaster, the better you get. But it's really hard to explain that to a new investor until you've been through it. I don't know about you guys, I still look at my investing accounts every day. Part of my job, I could argue. But
every day I look at it like 4 or 5 times. Yeah. Last thing I do before bed.
I'm itching that I haven't looked.
Yeah, I know. As soon as we get off the podcast, Dara's like, what's going on here?
It's a bad behavior, but I'm more out of just habit now, just looking at it. But the best investors over time keep looking.
Schmiegel. Yeah. So which book makes you rich then, Toby? Come on.
Which book makes you
rich? You've read 40, which is the one that makes you rich?
The comment which comes up all the time, which is the smart ass answer is, if you want to get rich, make a book about being rich.
I was going to ask what your book is. Yeah, you should just summarize your 40, like, this is the only investing book you need.
Yeah. And the truth is no book's going to make you rich, but a very
Toby
basic...
Newbatt will.
We do our best. We do our best. We try and help you along the journey. I'd love to be able to have, probably like your channel, in 10 or 20 years' time, many decades' time, to be able to look back and have tens or hundreds of thousands of people that can say, I started investing.
You've got that, mate. Why do you think you've not got that? He did Toby all the time to me. He's like, oh, your channel. I'm like, you got 100,000 subscribers. He acts like he's tiny little channel. And he's got his huge channel.
All right, Daddy Pig.
But it's like,
Mommy Pig's still pretty big. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's good. What I mean is, I just love to look back and someone to say, oh, I started investing because that video you did then, and in 20 years' time, this made such a difference. Because
I think you should give yourself a bit more credit.
I
think you should give yourself a bit more credit, mate. Like you leaving a really good impact there, on people. And I think you lean more into like the market as well, and you're there for those times when people do panic more than I am. In terms of like you'll react quicker, and I think that's a really valuable service in the world today, because in the times when the things burn, which they always do, you're there going, don't worry, it's okay. Yeah. You're like the guiding hand, whereas a lot of people are like, oh my God, I told you this was going to happen. I know.
Apparently every crash is a great opportunity to make a YouTube video. I hope people realize that. And I do have the shocked face occasionally. I don't think I've put flames in my thumbnail yet, but I do put red now and then, but you have to get people's attention. But the message from me will always be the same. So it's going to be a bit boring, but it will always be, these things happen. Well, if you weren't convinced before about starting investing, hopefully you've been given enough there on your reading list to get started, and there shouldn't really be any excuse now, should there?
However, we also have sorted you out with a nice email guide, which really teaches you all the fundamentals of investing. Check it out. You can get it in the link in the description below. Do you like our new demo? He's baby demo, but I think he's got a better beard.
I'm doing my best here. Yeah, I need to be a bit taller for the microphone, but I think I could replace him. What do you think? Don't trust this man.